Been discussing all morning here a new study by the ISPCC and the Children's Rights Alliance has revealed that more than half of Irish adults would support a ban on slapping children, while 73% of parents said that they view slapping as an ineffective way to discipline a child. The two children's organisations are calling for an outright ban on slapping children and the implementation of a large-scale positive parenting campaign.
Joining us this morning to discuss the findings are Tanya Ward, Chief Executive of the Children's Rights Alliance, and barrister and mother of five, Aileen Hickey. First though, let's hear what you had to say on the matter.
Do you think it's something that should be introduced, there should be a ban on it?
Definitely, yeah.
Why would you think that?
Should raise a hand to a child. I don't think it really solves any problems. Just teaching them to hit back, really, aren't you? So,
do you think people do it when they become frustrated?
you can understand, I suppose, it can get very frustrating looking after children, but there's other ways of disciplining a child where you don't have to raise your hand to them.
What do you think about disciplining your kids like that?
It doesn't work, so it doesn't. It's like they don't learn from being slapped.
Do you think there's other ways around it?
There is, yeah. So there is, like this, like time out or stuff like that, but slapping doesn't work.
Do you think a ban should be put in place so parents can't hit their children?
Well, that's a bit over the top, maybe, you know.
Very interesting. And we've just been discussing it all morning in here, and I'm one of the few people in the entire newsroom who didn't get the odd slap growing up. And a lot of people said that they found it beneficial. They didn't find it a negative thing. And Tanya, I said that to you, and you said that's an unusual response, that most people don't look back at being slapped and go, oh no, I did find it an effective way of being disciplined.
Well, that's right. I mean, most times I suppose when people resort to corporal punishment, or they slap or they hit or they beat their child, they've done it because they've lost the rag. They've been pushed to their absolute limit. And that's
Tanya, just sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you're very careful with the words you use here, right?
Yeah.
Slap, smack, beat. They mean
totally different things.
Completely different things to me. Now, I don't think anybody
They do. You're right. But what the law allows you to do at the moment, it allows you to rely on the common law defence of reasonable and moderate chastisement to discipline your children. And one person's view of what's reasonable is very different to another. And that's the problem with the law at the moment.
Okay.
So you would advocate an outright ban to prevent somebody doing something where a child is hurt? I mean, that's right. It was just interesting chatting to people outside. My parents were totally hippies, so I never got hit. I've got no idea what it was like chatting to people. And I said, why did you find it beneficial? And they said, yeah, because it was a short, sharp slap, and I learnt. And I said, but could you not have learned the same lesson without the slapping? And they said, no, we drew a line in the sand, and I learned from it, which I was very surprised to hear. So is there any psychology out there or any documentation or research to show that it's an effective way of disciplining?
Yeah. The only thing it's effective at doing is immediately stopping a behaviour, but all the studies show it actually is harmful for children, and overall it's not an effective way to discipline children. You know, for every person who said it didn't do me any harm, there is another person who said it was actually very harmful to me. Affects their self-esteem, it can damage the relationship between a child and their parent, and it can make things escalate very quickly. That's one of the things in my own personal experience with my parents. And you know, it doesn't really control children who are very defiant as well. You have to use more inventive methods. What's very interesting from the survey results that we got from Behaviours and Attitudes was 73% of people felt it was an effective way to discipline, and 80% of people said positive reinforcement they thought was the most effective way to discipline children. So rewarding children when they get something right.
Okay, Aileen, it's not an effective way of disciplining children, and it produces harmful effects long term. You would disagree with that?
I would actually disagree with that, yeah. I mean, you know, I'm not recommending smacking or slapping your children to anybody, you know, and I do think the majority of the time it is a last resort for parents who have, you know, sometimes you have lost control and sometimes you're very frustrated. But I do think, and I, you know, got a couple of smacks as a child, I do think it's short and sharp, and it tells you not to do that again. You know, I mean, of my children, two of them that I remember giving a smack to, one because she ran out in front of a car. You know, I was very frightened and I was angry, and I gave her a smack, you know, and I think she remembered that she was never going to run in front of a car again. And the other one, she just literally stood in the kitchen and gave me about, you know, 3 bar loads of cheek, and I actually got so frustrated that I did give her a smack. But again, you know, it calmed her down. And I've spoken to a number of parents and a number of mothers about this, and I actually think a short smack, you know, which literally is over and done with in a couple of minutes, is much better than, you know, a psychological kind of discipline, which a lot of parents now seem to be doing, whether it's this time out business, which actually I think is very exclusionary And, you know, I think that can lead to longer psychological damage, you know, whereas the other one is over and done within a couple of minutes, you know, with this time out, or, you know, you're not allowed to go play with your friends or all the rest of it. Now, I mean, I've done everything, you know, I've taken away their stuff, whatever their favourite thing is, you know, so, you know, it's not like I would resort to smacking, you know, as you know, the first form of discipline.
The two examples you cited were where you were frustrated.
Yes.
So you'd lost control.
I absolutely 100% agree that it is a loss of control by the
after you'd
parent.
administered the smack, did you go, oh, jeez, I didn't mean to do that? Did you regret it?
No, I didn't actually. No,
okay.
I didn't regret it, and I definitely think it worked. And I've also done the other thing. You know, I have actually. You know, there was one particular child of mine. Who
shall remain nameless.
Who she is, yeah. Who I sat in a corner for, you know, maybe an hour, and actually I felt worse about that because, you know, she was so upset at the end of it, and she didn't actually really understand why I stood her in the corner for an hour. The one that I gave the smack to knew exactly what she'd done, and she wasn't going to repeat it again. So, you know, I think criminalising something that a parent does as a form of discipline that they hope is going to help their child, you know, is very dangerous. And I know there was actually an article in the Telegraph last year which said that smacking a child, you know, as long as the child knows that it's done for the right reasons, and as long as the child is shown love and all the rest of it afterwards, doesn't actually cause any type of long-term psychological damage.
The reality of it, that's not what happens. When people do smack their children or hit their children, they've done it because they've lost control.
But I agree with you there, but actually I think you have to draw a very fine line between, you know, giving a child a smack once or twice, or long-term repetitive smacking where it loses its power and you lose control entirely, and maybe the smacking gets more excessive because...
But that's beating the child.
That's beating the child,
and how do you control that in law? At the moment, the law allows you to do either. How do you legislate for that?
Yeah, but how do you also legislate? How do you criminalise a parent for giving a child what they consider is a smack across the back of the hand for touching the oven?
If you introduce a prohibition, other countries they've done it. We're actually behind the curve. There's 16 other countries in Europe that have introduced a prohibition, and what's actually happened is it changed attitudes for parents. It hasn't actually resulted in lots of parents clogging up the courts and being charged and criminalised. Really, it's about attitudinal change. But the other thing that you need to do as well is you need to support parents, because the other thing that came from the study was that 70% of those surveyed felt that we don't do enough in Ireland in terms of providing public education about alternative forms of discipline and doing public awareness. And what was very interesting about the survey as well was that, you know, over 60% of people actually thought it was already a crime in Ireland at the moment.
Well,
that was very interesting
people,
finding for us.
You know, say a lot of things in a survey that they don't necessarily do in their own household. You know, I think there's something like, is it 40% have admitted to giving their child a smack? I think actually, if you look at this, you know, if you actually went into the households, I think the statistics are much higher. That's those who admit to it.
Well, there was a study that year. I mean, you're right. The study from last year in September, the Growing Up in Ireland survey, and that involved 10,000 3-year-olds throughout the country, and 45% of people admitted that they had struck their child.
But the percentage would be much higher, actually, I think. You know, that's those who admit to it. I mean, I think you could probably...
It's not socially acceptable to do it anymore. Whatever you feel about it, it's not socially acceptable to do it. I mean, when was the last time you saw somebody smacking a child in the street?
I would be shocked if I saw that.
But when we were growing up, we saw that regularly. If the child did something and ran away, they'd get a slap in the back.
And you're horrified because it's wrong. That's the reality of it. You're horrified because it's wrong. You put yourself in the child's position.
In any situation,
and it's humiliating for a child.
Tanya, can I ask, this shouldn't make a difference, but are you a mother?
I am a mother.
You are a mother.
I have two small children.
What form of discipline do you use?
Well, look, it goes up and down. With our 3-year-old, my best friend gave me the chart and the gold stars, and this was going to, you know, be fantastic. But, you know, he just didn't respond to it. And he said, "Do you want a gold star?" "No, I don't." So we had to figure out another form, let's say, a positive reinforcement, and we figured out a Star Wars book with Star Wars stickers.
So you don't do timeouts. There's no negative discipline.
No, occasionally timeout. You know, when things go really far.
And you've never smacked?
No, I haven't. And I mean, I'm not going to say I never will, because you just never know what's going to happen. I'm not going to be all high and mighty about it. But the big thing,
Tanya,
I think,
you
for
just
me...
said that you say you never will smack. So do you want to be criminalised for something that you might possibly do in the future?
It's attitudinal change. That's
but I actually think most people have a very heightened awareness.
Look at it in another way. At the moment, the only prohibition against smacking is in childcare settings, and foster care parents, they do have advice guidelines telling that they cannot smack and hit a child. So we accept in some settings children shouldn't be smacked, and yet in others in the home we think it's
that's
acceptable.
also because, you know, constitutionally the family is a very you know, is regarded as a very much a unit onto itself in Ireland. So, you know, know, you are really imposing the nanny
it's not
state
just-
if you're telling parents how to discipline their children.
But actually, it's also about childminders as well. Like, the vast majority of children are actually being cared for at home, and they're not. There's no prohibition on them.
That's
on
good. Eileen,
smacking
would you
as
be
well.
comfortable with a childminder minding your children, smacking your child?
Absolutely not.
You would
No,
be.
of course I wouldn't. No, but
Is that not a massive contradiction?
No, it's not, because as I said, I wouldn't recommend smacking your child or slapping your child. I'm just saying that sometimes it happens. It's usually a last resort, and that doesn't mean that you should be criminalised for doing it if it's smacked across the back of the hand.
If you did it to anybody else's child, or anybody else indeed, it would be assault.
But is that not telling?
That's it.
But is that not telling in and of itself that if it's unacceptable for other people to do it, surely it's not acceptable for you to do it?
Actually, I actually
I'm
don't
not a parent,
think
so I asked that question innocently.
Well, I am a parent, and like you, Aileen, I have smacked mine. I was smacked at home, and I was beaten in school. I mean, I had far worse.
But that wasn't a positive experience.
No, most certainly wasn't. And the only thing I can say is that I'm just surprised I wasn't slapped more at home, because I certainly deserved it. And I don't know that it did me any harm. No, I wouldn't do it to my own children, although they have got them at the odd time. Actually, usually making them kiss each other and tell each other they love. They'd rather get a slap than be... What did you do that? Well, kiss and make up.
That was more effective, yeah.
But you know, and I do think, Mark, that there are worse forms of discipline than, you know, a quick smack. I mean, I think...
Take their phone off.
But the research would say otherwise, as Tanya said. The research
the research is showing that those other forms of discipline are more effective, but it's also showing that it's very, very harmful to children. Overall, smacking, hitting, beating children is very harmful, and it's not an effective form of discipline. And what's really interesting from the survey findings is the majority of people surveyed actually felt that as well.
Well, see, those words are very important. I would consider, looking at it now, I would think that probably people would look at what my parents did and say, well, that's beating. I don't consider that beating. I consider what happened in school was beating. I got a slap, I got chastised, I got smacked. Beating happened elsewhere, and whatever they did out of love.
Yeah.
It's a very, very interesting
People
conversation,
in school
guys.
did it because they could. I consider that bullying.
And you remember what happened to you in school. You remember it very clearly.
I do, and there's one man in particular, and if I saw him in front of me, I'd run him down. Right? And I'll never forget him. To the day I go to my grave, I curse that man.
You're damaged. You are damaged by it.
Yeah, that's like corporal punishment in school.
Yeah. But anyway, there you go. So
guys, we could talk about it for quite a long time. It's a very interesting topic, and thank you, Aileen, for being so honest, and thank you, Tanya, for coming on the show.